Welcome to House Einstein Podcast 50. I am Osman Parvez with House Einstein, and with me is Hamish Crabb.
Hello, hello. It's the Big 5-0.
The Big 5-0. How's it going, Hamish?
Not too bad. We've got a pretty decent show lined up, so kind of excited to get to it, and we'll see how we do on timing with this one. It's pretty filled out. It's like the more planning we do, the bigger they get. You know?
That's true. There was significant planning, and therefore we have a lot of things to talk about today, and hopefully deeply entertain you on the House Einstein podcast.
Yeah.
And this podcast is, of course, sponsored by the House Einstein Brokerage, which is based in Boulder, Colorado. It serves Denver, Fort Collins, Boulder, all of the L's, Louisville, Lafayette, Longmont, as well as Superior and Broomfield. We venture into the suburbs of Denver, and we're also out into the resort towns and some of the mountain towns on the Front Range. That's our core area.
Of course, our footprint has extended further for repeat clients and very special interest projects, but for the most part, that's about our main focus.
I'm paying subscriptions to 4 different MLSs, which
Lovely.
is sort of frustrating, but you have to pay to play in the real estate game, and it's the only way to get accurate information to our clients. Yeah. So our mission is to help you make a smarter real estate decision, but also to deeply entertain you. And I am the founder of House Einstein. I've been a real estate agent for over 20 years. Prior to that, I was involved in the investment world and worked as an analyst and an associate in capital markets, and did that for quite a few years before stumbling into real estate and eventually founding House Einstein. But this podcast is not for our clients, it's for the general public, and our attorneys tell us that we need to remind you that because of the format in which you are receiving this information and the fact we don't have a client relationship, that this podcast is entertainment. It's not legal advice, it's not real estate advice, it's definitely not love life advice, and at best it's humor and it might be badly delivered, but hopefully it does entertain you, and we'll do our best to keep you engaged.
Yeah, pretty much nailed it. You did a short bio. I'm Hamish. I've been at House Einstein for coming up on 3 years now, and I really kind of put my hands in all the pies in House Einstein. I help with the marketing, deal flow, deal management. I help out the agents and kind of the man behind the scenes for a lot of the things. So in front of the camera for the podcast.
In front of the camera for the and helping host the show and helping keep us engaged and interested. So we deeply appreciate you being here, Hamish.
Yeah, cheers.
All right, if you're looking for us, you'll find us at houseeinstein.com. Let's jump into what we're talking about today. Perfect. We're going to cover market conditions. We're going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion. That segment is pretty brief, so don't fly away or be frightened of it. It's pretty quick. We're going to cover 4 different sales of the week that I think are very interesting deals and might help educate you on market conditions and the business of real estate. And if you're one of the armchair real estate people here in Boulder, of which there are many, this is insight into deals you probably can't find anywhere else. And if you're looking for active insights into active listings, either reach out to us directly as a potential client, or you can wait around for the newsletter, which eventually I will publish. But the newsletter is the only place that we send out any sort of mass email on active listings, and that's for our prospective clients and current clients that aren't quite ready to jump into the market and just want to track things. Also, quite a few real estate agents, by the way, subscribe to that. But I can't put our thoughts about active listings into any sort of public format. I can't do that just because of the rules of real estate. So we'll cover sales of the week, and then we'll talk about a couple of interesting real estate related topics. And finally, we're going to hit the core topic, in the Tell Me Something I Don't Know segment. And that is all about confidentiality in real estate contracts and how much misinformation and misunderstanding is out there in real estate land. And what actually is confidential, what is not, why is confidentiality used. We're going to talk about all of those things and hopefully leave you much better informed and entertained with
That's the
some
goal.
with some stories, with some fun stories about how often it's the Wild West when it goes to what people think is confidential information.
No kidding. I need to pick your brain about something somewhat related, but not quite off the pod too. But that's for another day.
Okay, I'm curious what that is, Hamish. Now
Yeah.
you
I know.
said it on the pod, so now I'm really wondering.
I've
All
built
right.
your suspense.
You have. You're gonna tease me to make the pod go
Exactly.
faster. And it's related to confidentiality. That's fun. Okay,
All right.
let's get into it. So, market conditions. As of right now, only 23% of single-family houses in the city of Boulder are under contract, and only 18% of condos and townhomes are under contract. And again, that's city of Boulder, not Boulder County. And so it's a much smaller market segment, but it is what's happening in our fair city. And the last time I can recall this percentage dipping this low during the peak of the year, like this is the end of June, we're heading into July, and less than a quarter of inventory is under contract. That like might be 2008 or 2009. I'd have to go back through all of my old financial models to see the last time pending sales drop below 25%. And so what does that point to? It points to opportunity. And as inventory continues to build up and sales have slowed, the late summer and early fall market could have a lot of sellers that are ready to capitulate, ready to take a lower offer. They have had months of disappointment with no offers or disappointing offers, and they're finally ready to consider what some people call a low ball. I consider a low but aggressive offer. It also really, of course, it's always really important to choose your property well. Getting a great deal on a bad real estate asset is not a smart move. It's not good
Hard
for
to call
you.
a great deal.
It's not a great deal if it's a big discount on an overpriced listing that doesn't dip it below what is considered fair value. It's not a great deal if you got a huge discount on a bad home, a home that's in a bad location, a home that has serious issues with it. So you have to be really careful with, you have to be careful weighing the discount off the list price relative to the desirability of the asset.
That's right, yeah. I love a good deal, so sometimes I'll see one and reason goes out the window and I just like it because of the discount.
Right.
You got to watch yourself. Yeah.
Right. Me too. It's exciting. And then the old refrain comes back, if it's cheap for a reason, and you get what you pay for in life. So just like with representation, who you choose to represent you in a real estate transaction, if you think you're saving money with a discount agent, you probably aren't, unless you yourself have the expertise to do the property selection, negotiation, contract management, due diligence, all of those things. And in Boulder, the median sale price for houses is over 1.5. So choose your advisor carefully. You get what you pay for. Also choose your real estate asset even more carefully, because if it feels like you're getting a really good deal, there might be something that you're missing. And you have to ask yourself, what am I missing? Why am I getting such a good deal on this? And if it doesn't pass the sniff test for why it's such a good deal, you may want to just walk until you understand really why you're able to acquire it at such a phenomenal price.
We have had some clients reach out and they're like, what's the catch to this property? Because to us, it seems like a great deal, and we'll do like our deep dive, and sometimes it's super obvious, or sometimes we find something a little bit less disclosed.
I mean,
or it is a good deal.
There's two ends of the spectrum for quote unquote good deal. One good deal, for example, was a property I helped a client buy about 2 years ago, and it had been on the market a while, but had been very poorly marketed. And it included a second buildable lot, and we were able to negotiate an amazing price on that property. And because of that second lot, it's like a bank account for the future. Now, keep in mind, you have to pay property taxes on vacant land. That's expensive. But at the same time, this opportunity to eventually pull the trigger on the second lot was like a hidden incentive. And sometimes you see the same thing with development rights, like a subdivision right or subdivision potential. There could be huge upside, but you really have to understand it. And you often have to move pretty quickly once you realize what you're looking at. There are also hidden gems in the rough, and I've seen 11% I've negotiated 11% discounts in October on stale listings, particularly estate sales that they grossly overpriced it, and when they started the listing, the home was full of their family stuff, which is often looks like a hoarder collection. It's not uncommon for people as they get older to collect a lot more things. So the home hadn't been properly prepped for sale. And then they had an estate sale inside the house of all the seller's things. And the listing agent who had been managing it for months was dealing with adult children who aren't even local. And they've been dealing with months and months of no offers. And finally, you lob in this 20% below list offer, and they take it seriously. And you end up at a very nice number, which in hindsight, that's one of the best deals I've ever done. And I think it was October or November.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if it was 2 years ago. I think I would have remembered it, or maybe I do.
You don't. This deal is way before your tenure. Yeah. It's with a 3 or 4 time past client. And the interesting thing is I didn't find the house, right? Which is pretty typical. Finding the house is not what real estate agents do. They're like, Osman, I think this looks like a good deal. And I looked it up and I'm like, it does look like a good deal. And here are all the reasons. And we went and looked at it. We compared pros and cons. And then we negotiated I negotiated very aggressively for them and was able to knock it down to such a ridiculously low price. And the most interesting thing about it, honestly, is that it backed to South Boulder Creek, and was not in the floodplain. Only like a tiny little portion of the backyard was in the floodplain. And which meant that you literally have like your own private riparian corridor with cool air flowing through it, wildlife, you could dip your toes in the creek. It's not inundated by homeless people like some of the other locations that are closer to central and downtown Boulder. So that's all phenomenal. And I'm very jealous happy for these clients.
That's how you know it's a good one, right?
There's at least one house a year that I represent, usually on the buy side, that I really wish I was buying. Right. But clients come first, and even though we're in a position to potentially buy a different property and sell the one we're in, our primary residence, I don't do that to my clients. So.
Yeah. Alrighty. Enough time. No.
Okay, so that's market conditions. And what I see, again, too long didn't read, what I see is a strong buyer's market that's starting to build for late summer, early fall. And you should be looking at stuff now and getting your financing in order now. Choose your agent now so that when these opportunities appear, you're able to execute quickly. Because often they have a very short fuse and you don't have time to sit around waiting for it, waiting for an agent that's not responsive or doesn't have good negotiation skills, or to line up that financing that you might need to be able to pull the trigger.
Right.
All right, let's move on. What do you say?
All right. Is it time for... I don't think... we should do proud self-promotion.
Well, okay. Well, hold on. One last thing I want to mention before we move on for market conditions, and that is there were multiple 6-figure price drops this week in the city of Boulder. And the weakest or the biggest price drops are happening at the very top of the market, which is exactly in line with what you should expect, because the top of the market is saturated with listings that are not selling, particularly those above 3 million. So that's the sweetest opportunity. And as always in life, the best deals are falling to those that can most afford it. And the least attractive deals at the entry level there's still some, but you often have more competition at the entry level. So there you go. All right, let's move on to shameless self-promotion. And here's why I'm calling it for fun. Maybe this won't stick. Like, this is usually, we call this our buyer and seller hype section, but that car talk thing.
It doesn't have a good ring to it, buyer and seller hype either.
It does for people my age that are into cars. All right.
Oh, no, the shameless, the buyer and seller hype.
The hype. Hype, I think doesn't really capture the concept as well as the shame of self-promotion. But I think it's important to talk about what our buyers are doing in the market and what our sellers are doing in the market. We anonymize them, but this podcast is growing as a platform. The distribution's growing, and there's a really good chance that what we share here might resonate with a listener that has a property for sale or is looking to buy something like one of these listings. And if it's listed, we can talk about it with the address. If it's not actively listed, we cannot, but we can generalize about it. And so there you go. That's why we have this very short segment. And the shameless part comes right from Car Talk in the 1980s and my childhood. So comment if you like it, or comment if you don't. If you have a better name for this segment where we talk about these things, feel free to let us know what you think. We would love some more comments.
All right, wicked. Well,
all right.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 3 amazing listings that are worth thinking about and looking at, that are priced right and are properly prepared for sale, that I think buyers should look at. Riverside, Rosewood, and Alpine. So we'll walk through these really quickly. Riverside is directly across from Wonderland open space. You just go under the bridge. You do not have to cross over Broadway. And you are in some of the most magical open space in the city of Boulder. And if you haven't gone for a walk or a run or a bike ride on that trail segment, you should, because it is just stunningly beautiful. And we just did it the other day because we rode our bicycles to the concert in the Park series, and this concert was in Foothills Community Park. And even though I've lived in this town for coming up on 20 years, I still was astounded in the late afternoon, the sunlight, the golden hour was hitting, and just how lovely it felt to be in that particular segment of open space. And Riverside, this is 4155 Riverside, is also really nicely updated with permits, also expanded. It is turnkey, ready for the next owner, and deserves a look. Rosewood, Hamish, do you have anything to add? I should stop and say, did I miss anything?
I could just carry on with the greatness of the open space, but I mean, Riverside's a very cute property, and the updates inside and everything, it's nice and open with great finishes. I really do like that one, and the bathroom as well.
It's a nice property, and has a secure garage for your toys, and has access to the interior community open space. And if you want to go to Lucky's every night for dinner, it's right there, right? You can keep your pantry minimal because you can walk to Lucky's in 5 minutes from this, maybe 10. You can stroll. I'm sorry,
we could go on and on and on.
Not allowed to say walk. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on from this property, but it's worth a look. Rosewood, 1380 Rosewood, is right around the corner from our office. It is a development that was built with much nicer finishes than the vast majority of what you see for townhomes and condos in the city of Boulder. Mostly what you see in inventory is sort of beat up and was built in the 70s and 80s. It's very, in my opinion, not particularly great construction quality, and you're often surrounded by students. Anywhere near CU, you're surrounded by students. And as much as I love the youngins, the youth, living with them is a whole different thing than enjoying their shenanigans for 20 minutes or whatever. They do bring so much energy to our community and obviously so much economic value, but I don't want to live next to them.
I get it. Big time.
It's sort of we've had neighbors when I used to live in Martin Acres. We've had neighbors for so many years that were students. The student rental percentage of those homes, in my opinion, and I don't have the data, but it's pretty clear it's gone down, and that's because there's more and more single family buyers that have acquired those homes, not investors. But we for many years had at least 1 or 2 student rentals on our block, and they were just funny. I mean, they just didn't know. And so I would stop by and introduce myself and say, hey, we want you to have a good time. We want you to enjoy yourself. If you have, your landlord is whoever, but if you have trouble, you can reach out to us on anything. We know we're like ushering you into adulthood. But here's the thing. If you're going to throw a party, I need to know your number, because if it's going to be loud and late, I'm going to try to call you before I call the cops.
Right. Yeah. Be reasonable. And
Be
also, I can
neighbor.
be bribed with cookies.
Yeah, I can be bribed with cookies. You don't have to invite me to the party. I'm not going to play beer pong with you. Although in my 30s, I might have played beer pong with you. But in my late 40s, I'm probably not going to play beer pong with you. But you should also walk around and let the rest of the neighbors know you're about to throw a party. And don't let anybody shoot off fireworks. And make sure everyone has your number. And you should be good to go. We want you to have a good time and enjoy your time here in Boulder. And thank you for spending your money here too, or more likely your parents' money, but maybe your money.
Yeah.
All right, so that Rosewood
Okay.
is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath with really nice finishes in a adult, young professional, saturated neighborhood, meaning that there's not a lot of students and there's some nice restaurants nearby. It's continuing to improve as a location, and you're steps away from the new North Boulder Library. In about 2 years, you'll be steps away from the new Modern Art Museum, and the whole North Boulder Arts District continues to gain steam. It's a cool spot, and it's getting better. So consider it if you're thinking about a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo, and has a garage. Add that in as well. And then let's talk about Alpine a little bit. We just cut the list price at 605 Alpine to just below 1.5, which is a huge price reduction. And when you're evaluating Newlands, you will find a lot of east-west facing homes with very poor privacy. And what this home has is north-south orientation, which the sellers have already capitalized on by putting on a Tesla solar roof and a solar wall, a Tesla wall, to store all of that energy. So this isn't just solar panels. The shingles themselves are solar. And it also has a super rare, oversized 2-car garage with a loft on top, which has ADU potential. So I just reached out to an architect, and we're likely to put together a feasibility study just to help buyers visualize the potential of this property, because it backs to an alley that leads right to North Boulder Park, and it's super private, has a very generous sized backyard. And there's a lot to love about this thing, and I think that the market really should take a look at it, and particularly think about the opportunity in the long run and the rarity of the north-south orientation in Newlands, steps away from Alpine Market and all that. Sorry, Ideal Market and all that.
Yeah, no kidding. It's that north-south orientation, it really matters. I think you covered on solar a little bit, but yeah, it's excellent.
And there's another listing I can't go into detail on in this podcast because it's active, but it's priced at 1.2. And that listing, I don't know, what can I say? It is mid-century. It has amazing lines. And it's completely decrepit with needing tons and tons and tons of work, like down to the studs tear down, and is not private at all, and has accessibility issues, and has a 1-car garage that's beneath it. I'm going to write more about that property in the upcoming Fresh Listings newsletter because it's active. I can't talk about it. I'm actually going to go look at it with a buyer again today. But this particular buyer is excited about a teardown and the opportunity to rehab a home that has architectural distinction. It's a different type, it's a different target audience for that type of property. But even at 1.2, it's probably overpriced
for the work that needs to go into it.
Several $100,000. The listing agent's currently playing guess that price. And I'm not going to mention the address or any other details because I don't want this person coming after me and filing a complaint with the Real Estate Commission. But I will talk about it in the Fresh Listings newsletter. So please subscribe if you have not already subscribed.
Nice. Flawless. I'm thinking these buyers are going to go see it with. I'll talk. We'll just talk after. Yeah, I was going to say I think I know who it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're past clients who deeply regret choosing a different agent to represent them on a deal that finally closed for them.
Them.
And I will.
It closed?
Yeah, I will. It did. It did. Nice. It finally closed. And I'm not going to mention any more about that, even though it's a closed listing, because we try not to criticize our competition by name. Mm-hmm. We criticize by category. And if she had done a stellar job, I would be giving her props that she had better pricing analytics and her marketing resulted in $500,000 of upside above what I thought it would sell for. Instead, it sold for $100,000 below what I thought it would sell for. And it took like 9 months of pain out of my poor clients. So I'm going to see them tonight, and we will heal. Time heals all wounds.
Sure does. Alrighty. Well, I don't even feel shame. So I guess it is shameless self-promotion, right?
That's
right.
They're
good properties. We're proud to present them.
Yeah. And hat tips to the Magliosi brothers, who both, I think, passed on for having an amazing show and being really funny. Shameless self-promotion. Okay. Let's move on.
Yep. Sales of the week.
All right, Hamish, I would ask you to introduce these, but I picked all 4 of them, and I feel like I probably need to lead the way. But I will.
I could take a stab at the news ones that I put in there if you want when we hit the news segments.
when we get to the news, we'll talk about that. But I'll ask what you think about each of these properties and what you know about them.
Okay.
So the Arete, was constructed, I think, in 2008. Let me pull this up. Yeah, 2008. And back in the old days of Boulder, there used to be a restaurant. Now I just got the days of yore.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
there used to be an amazing restaurant here called the Oasis. And right where, so just to the, on this corner and just to the west, there's currently a big concrete pad that is called the community pad, and nothing ever happens there. This location, unfortunately, that pad was a concession to the developer, from the developer of the St. Julian Hotel. And the Arret I don't think was part of the same development as the St. Julian, certainly wasn't the same developer, but this particular condo unit looks over that concrete pad. And someday, who knows, there'll be something interesting there, because as a public space, it's horrible. It's just a concrete pad. But as a condo, the Arret was intended as very high-end luxury finishes, supposedly premium construction techniques, and was targeted at a very affluent potential buyer base, and was developed by a very well-known and very affluent Boulder real estate person who people may or may not know, but Steve Tebow was heavily involved in its construction. And so I remember when it had just hit the market in 2008, and I was a little astounded by the price points, because it was super premium. And I remember having the sales team I used to have a real estate meetup, and I had the sales team into the meetup, and I instructed them, look, we want you to educate us about this product. Don't sell us. That's our goal. Tell us what we don't know. Tell us how to think about this, how it's positioned next to its competition. But please don't just come in with a sales pitch.
Right.
And they just came in with a sales pitch. They spent 30 minutes rah-rahing about how amazing it was. And it was one of the most annoying presentations ever at the real estate meetup that I used to host. And
you tried.
I never had I tried. I never had a client want to buy at the Arret, because it just came off as so premium of a product. And our clients tend to be really, really smart when it comes to their money, and not just throw a bunch of money at luxury finishes downtown. And that's sort of what this felt like. It was and is, this particular unit is a large unit. It's on the second floor. It's almost 2,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 3 baths. So it's bigger than most houses in most basic ranch style houses, certainly on with 1-level living, garage access, 2-car garage spaces, 2 garage spaces in the 2 car spaces in the garage. Right? This is a lot of space.
It's the same size as my house.
Yeah, it's big. And the finishes look very traditional. I don't think this unit has had any updates since the owner acquired it. But here's the history, right? And this is the big risk of buying new build, that you might pay so much that you don't actually break even ever when you go to sell it, or in your holding period. And that's sort of what happened here. So if you look at the history of the home, it was acquired from the original developer in 2014. So it's not 2000. Yeah, this was on the market probably from 2008 all the way to 2014. So that should have been your warning, right?
Good Lord.
It didn't sell. And in 2014, it was acquired, and it was acquired for 1.5.
Wow.
Although, no, yeah, that's right. That
yeah,
looks
I
like
see
the
1515
track record. 1515 in 2014. And here's the listing history. So in 2009, before it was acquired, it was listed at 1575 and then didn't sell. In 2010, it was listed again at 1595, so 20,000 more, and didn't sell that year. In 2000, didn't sell that year. No price changes. And then then it was acquired without listing in 2014. So somebody bought it directly from the developer or the sales team, and it never made it onto the MLS, which is an interesting thing by itself, because all brokerages who are participants in the MLS are supposed to put their sales on the MLS, but it may have sold off market.
Developers aren't part of the MLS, right? Like they play by a different set of rules.
That's true. The developer, if they're not a member of the MLS, do not need to put it on the MLS. So if there were no agents involved and somebody contacted the developer directly, that may be why there was no record of the 2014 sale. But I mean, there is in the public record, but it's not on the MLS. But we know what they paid. They paid 1515, and again that was in 2014. In April 2014.
It's a little cathartic just seeing the listing history here because they're bouncing in the exact same range for almost a decade, trying it, but constantly settling at the same price.
And what has the dollar done in that decade, right? In a decade, how much value has the dollar lost, and how much more money would they have made if they found a different real estate asset, not this one? So they tried to sell it in 2018. So 4 years after buying it, they said, okay, we're not using it, whatever, let's dump it, let's get it on the market. They put it on 1.9. They put it on the market for 1.9 in May. And then about 3 months later, they cut it. So this is the end of August, end of the season. They cut it to 175. Hey, Betsy, let's drop the price. And nothing happened. 3 more months, and they pulled it off. So one thing they're doing correctly is they're at least trying to get it on in the summer selling season. They're not trying to list it in the off season. All right, so now following year, 2019, April, they've had a serious discussion with their listing agent. And the listing agent says, look, you've got to price it at 165 if you want to sell it. And they say, fine, that we're going to at least get our commissions back, right? We're not going to lose money.
Yeah, offset.
With the commissions, we should be fine. Let's sell it at 165. So they listed it at that number, and nothing happened all summer. And they pulled it off the market. It expired. The listing, poor agent, he only had a listing agreement for 5 months. So by the way, when you sign short-term listing agreements, there's a demotivating factor for your agent to invest a lot of capital in things like videography, staging, professional photography. Like, you get what you pay for. We do much longer listing agreements in general, particularly on an asset like this one that's known for
and
not
we set
selling.
That expectation, right?
Let's look at the history, dear seller. It has been on the market how many times since 2018, and it still hasn't sold? Okay, so nothing happened. I don't know if they rented it out. But this past September, and this is not the right time of year to list it, they listed it for 1.85. So they said, you know what, it didn't sell for 165 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the market's had such an upswing in numbers.
It's never sold for what they initially asked for.
It's definitely worth 1.85 now. And their agent said, sure, I'll list it in September for that, and did, and nothing happened. And by December, 3 months later, they cut it to 1.7, and then nothing happened. And then they cut it again to 1.575 in February. And it went under contract in April of this year. There was a weird little expired backup thing. I think the listing agent didn't notice that.
Yeah, that's strange.
The listing technically, I think all that happened is the listing technically expired. But because it was already under contract, or because they wanted to close the deal, they negotiated with the agent, and the listing was renewed a few days later, a week later, and it eventually sold. It just sold for 1.45. So how many times did they try to sell it? 1, 2, 3 times. Third time was the charm, and at a price that was $65,000 below what they paid for it a decade ago.
Ouch.
So this listing, why did it sell for so little? Well, first, it's on the second floor, right? Not the top floor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a higher floor.
Right? You're going to spend this kind of money on a condo. You kind of want the top floor. The views are of the concrete pad, right? Where the community pad.
I would rather the pad than another building right next to it.
Okay, fair enough. But you're going to get an echo chamber there.
Yeah.
The pad is boring, but it has views. Fair enough. At least one side you've got that. The other side, I don't know. It doesn't look that great. But maybe there's a little pocket view of the Flatirons. They tried to capture that in photo 9.
Could be too.
And again, photo 12, they tried to show off the little Flatiron view. But it also has $1,000, $950 a month HOA fee.
Glad you mentioned that.
$15,000 a year in taxes. And for 1.45, you can buy a decent single-family house in the city of Boulder and update it. And people that can spend this much on a condo can spend more on a house, typically, and update it. So you want the lock-in? Like the number of buyers for luxury is not that deep, luxury condos. the depth of market. So you're taking some chance, and I hope the new owners are happy, but it's not a unit, at least from a listing history perspective, that screams this is going to be a great investment in the long run.
I wonder
I
too.
think
Or go ahead.
they got it at a fair price, and they got it for far less than the sellers paid for it, especially on real terms. If you adjust it on an inflation basis,
They got a steal.
they got the sellers lost a lot of money.
I'm glad you brought up the HOA, but just looking again, it looks like the primary bedroom is almost like in a fishbowl. Scrolling through, it's got its own like private balcony, but directly across that is another building with essentially all of its windows looking in at your bedroom. And I wonder if that's kind of a bit of a deterrent for this unit.
Maybe that could have been a factor. I think it's office spaces, not.
Okay.
That's an office complex.
At least it's that.
Yeah, it's a very unique product. I don't know how well it's held up over the years, but if your agent tells you you can only make money in Boulder real estate, all you have to do is hold it through the downturn. I want you to remember this particular deal because these people lost a lot of money and a lot of time, and probably dealt with a lot of frustration. I'm not going through the listing to see how many different agents were involved, but it wouldn't surprise me if they switched agents a few times too.
Yeah.
Trying to get it sold.
Okie dokie. We've seen it. We've laughed. We've cried.
Next.
Oh, did we even get the address on that one?
1077 Canyon Boulevard, Unit 201.
Perfect.
Sorry. Yep. Let's make sure we mention that clearly.
And
1077 Canyon Boulevard, Unit 201. It's in the Arete, and it does have great little Flatiron views. And the seller lost a lot of money.
Sure did. Okay.
All right. Next. Different type of story. And this is a happy story for the seller. And it also points to a very unique phenomena in the real estate market around luxury, I would call it student housing. And Landmark Lofts is located on the access road to US 36, directly across from CU. And it is heavily populated by students. I don't know of anybody that is not a student that's ever lived there, but I'm sure there are people, but I would imagine it's probably 70% or higher student population. And the buildings there's a few penthouses, and the penthouses have spectacular views.
Yeah.
Right? They're really pretty and great outdoor living spaces. And you can see that in the way the photos are captured. Like photo 5 really nails it, although you got that beam in the middle of the way, but you get the idea.
They highlight the views almost exclusively in this listing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's great. They did a great job with I mean, how many photos of the view?
No kidding.
You know what? I want some more photos of the teal patio set.
Yeah.
And the sunset. At least the sunset, I think, is real. Does the sun set where the sun is setting in this photo? I think it does.
Can. Yeah.
So I think these photos are real. There's a little sun flare in them. I really have a problem with fake photos. These look legit.
I think they are.
And the home was nicely staged and professionally presented, and very heavy on the location and the views and the penthouse experience. Which, when I went to college, I lived in a cinder block chamber with a bunk bed.
Right.
With a roommate that played a lot of basketball and had a lot of sweaty clothes in the room, and didn't do laundry very often. That was my
Different
college
lives.
experience.
Yep.
This is like the lifestyles of the rich and famous version of student luxury living.
Yeah.
For CU, and that's almost certainly who bought it. And what's interesting is that the owners paid. Let's pull it up. The owners paid $745, and if you look at the listing history, it's just one owner after another that made some good money on this. There may be a divorce sale in 2015 or a family transfer, but even then the numbers keep moving up. Mm-hmm. But these particular sellers paid $745 in 2021, so that's 3 years ago. And they listed it at 1.15. It's a 2-bedroom, 3-bath, 1,500 square feet, has 2 car spaces underground. I don't think that's secure parking, by the way, for your individual space. It's just a shared garage. And it was listed at $1,095,000. It was under contract within 5 days, and it sold for 1.15. Yeah. But yeah, on both listing periods. So it flew off the market, and it sold for $55,000 over list, which brought it into $725 a square. And basically, there was nothing else like it on the market that made any sense. And somebody jumped on it, and they want Junior to be in luxury digs and
Junior
have
got
this
him.
kind of living. That's my guess. I mean, it could be adults or young professionals or even a granny flat. I sure hope they did their homework on how many students live at Denmark Lofts.
Yeah, but I mean, what a gorgeous penthouse! It's a penthouse. Yeah,
It's what I call the top floor. It's the 4th floor. I call those the penthouses. And so the thing is, there is some traffic noise, by the way. Like US 36 is cruising through there at 45 miles an hour, sometimes faster. But it sort of doesn't matter.
With traffic for now, but
right.
Yeah.
But just the way those patios are designed and the experience of that and the nice staging, I mean, it really sold it. This was a period of construction when the exposed ducting was a hot thing, and that's what they did.
Which looks a little out of place with the way that it's finished and everything, but I'm not against it.
I mean, the idea is you're building, and usually it's concrete construction, not the stick frame, and I don't know how these are built. But you do that because it gives you lofted ceilings,
right?
And you still get the feeling of a very tall ceiling. And they marketed them as industrial, the industrial style, and so the Peloton has a bunch like this too, and they're interesting. I don't know if they're. I think you have more to dust and clean.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, right? Like Chrome or Barkeep Best Friend, something like that.
Right.
Keeping it clean.
All right.
Yeah.
That's that deal. Opposite end of the spectrum from the last one.
Yeah. Seeing the pricing history on that one was, I mean, I think there's a few things you should look at when you're buying, but seeing that, looking at those 2 things alone kind of tells the story. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about 3645 Endicott. So earlier this year, a tenant of this property contacted us and said, "Hey, Osman, we'd like to talk to you about representing us to buy some property. And, oh, by the way, we have the possibility of buying the property we're living in, which happened to be this property." And we sat down, and I looked at this property, and I looked at what their price range was, and the conclusion was pretty clear. This is a phenomenal property. The way it's angled at the park, in particular, it has really nice sight lines. And it's a ranch-style home with a full basement. All the info, by the way, looks incorrect. 2 bedrooms, I don't think that's right. I don't think 1 bath is right either. I don't think either of those details are correct. But the price is right. I would assume that the agent got that part right. But this is one of those things where you're required to enter it into the MLS. And their agent is EXP. Which,
I was just going to ask, yeah.
I mean, look, and I don't want to insult anybody at EXP, but there's a lot of rookie agents at EXP. And so this is like bare minimum data entry into the MLS. And so I have a 90% confidence that my potential clients bought this place. And that's what I told them they should do. I was like, the cost to move and the odds of you finding a better property and the price that you're talking about are extremely low. I'm happy to take you to go look at some places. That's what you called me for. But my honest advice is to you should try to work this out with your landlord because this is a really good deal. And you don't even have to move, and you're getting a property that's really rare as a property type. And they took that to heart, and I think they bought it, but I won't know their names who acquired it until it updates on the tax records. But I'm about 90% sure it's the people that we talked to earlier this year because suddenly they went quiet. I mean, we gave them the advice that was the honest advice. It didn't make me money, but it clearly was the right move for them. And I think what happened is they negotiated with their landlord. Their landlord called their buddy the listing agent or their cousin or a friend of their daughter or something who said, we would like you to just handle the transaction paperwork. And they went through the paperwork with one agent, and that agent closed the deal. Not sure what they got paid. That's not disclosed. Doesn't really matter. But what they paid for it was a very, very attractive price for a very nice home that worked for them and the family and will be a great investment in the long run. Basic, likely 3-bedroom, 1-bath. Let me look at the tax record since we can't trust the MLS at all.
Yeah, I can't make a whole lot out of this. I want to apologize to listers if they're clicking along. Also, you might have to be very descriptive with your memory of this place.
I mean, I don't remember it. It definitely did not have just 2 bedrooms. Right. That's what I remember. So this is a lot more house than what the tax record reflects. It may have been reconfigured. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't trust this MLS record at all. It's probably a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I don't think it had a basement, which I think the square footage is accurate. But phenomenal property, very good deal for the buyers. You get no photos. Very cool backyard. I do remember that part, and the photos show that. You get 1 photo of 1 bedroom.
Yeah.
It might be possible that the old listing is on Zillow because it was a rental.
I did find the old one.
Did you?
Yeah, I found it on Realtor, and then I
okay.
exited off because I was like, well, that's the old one.
Let me look it up real quick, see if it jogs my memory on what it really was.
Oh, is it the wrong address? Matter.
Yeah. I mean, the take home on this is that it's the type of property, so sometimes you get deals, right, off market. And the first home I ever bought, we bought directly from the landlord. And we took out the normal commissions from the comps. We're like, look, the comps say the house is worth $375, but that includes 6% commissions. We want no commissions in the deal. And this is going to be a really easy sale process for you, so take the 6% off the top. And they did. They agreed that was fair. So yeah, sometimes you get a phenomenal deal by buying your landlord's house, the house you're already living in. That's why one of the reasons why you want to have a really good relationship with the landlord, because it might make sense.
Mm-hmm. And it costs nothing to be nice.
It costs nothing, and you probably get your property dealt with much faster, right, Hamish?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a maintenance issue.
Things
you're
happen.
much more responsive to people when they're nice to you. We just had a hot water heater go out on one of our rentals, and they contacted Hamish, who contacted me at 8:00 at night. You got the call at 8:00 at night about a hot water heater that went out in the middle of summer, and we had it fixed by noon the next day, which is faster than I would have fixed my own water heater. And I don't know. The story of property management in Boulder is one of good luck. It might be a month before you get it fixed, and we're getting it fixed in less than 24 hours.
We're doing all right.
That's phenomenal service, and you had standing orders to not go that fast.
I don't know what to tell you. Anyhow,
you just care too much, Hamish, and I really am impressed with your responsiveness. Yeah, try to. Tenants are not supposed to get that level of service. That's just for our buyers and sellers.
I can't turn it off, man. I don't know what to tell you. Alrighty.
Well,
keeping time moving
it,
along.
And I hope they tipped you. All right.
they were really appreciative. They're cool, yeah.
They should be. Jesus, that's amazing. All right, 1529 Easy Rider, Unit 201 is our last sale of the week that we're going to talk about. And back when I was a greenhorn agent, had only been licensed in Colorado for a year, previously licensed on Nantucket in Massachusetts, and had not done a lot of deals. We were with Remax, and in 2006, we had a buyer. I don't remember how we got the buyer, but they were lovely people. And this is the property we helped them buy for $324,000. We had a pretty good negotiated discount when we helped them way back in the day. And since that time, they hired a firm to update it. I don't know if that's the Caddis Collaborative that updated it, but I remember the buyer had a real eye for design, and this had to be it. There was nothing else on the market that checked the boxes. And what was really interesting about Holiday and Easy Rider Lane and I think they're called Studio Muse. My brain those words are popping into my head for some reason. They really appeal to some people, and some people hate them. They look at them and they're so not traditional as a housing unit. Oh yeah, there it is. Studio Muse is in the subdivision description. The first floor office space, I think this has it. Let me see.
Oh, I really like this. It might not fit some
Yeah.
people's mental model, but wow.
Well, this is the now updated
Yeah.
version that my clients, I'm pretty sure, did all this work. And it's just a fantastic space. Vaulted ceilings.
Good pick.
Somebody did this American clay style finish. That's what I think we're looking at on the walls.
I like it.
That I don't know if they did.
Yeah.
It's just stunningly beautiful and well executed. And I don't think the office space on the first floor was included. Nope. No, the spare room has the office space. So that's the office space. But yeah, fantastic little property for professionals, people that are looking for a property to be turnkey and visit their grandchildren. And this one is so nicely designed and updated. And it's just every time it's ever been on the market, it sells really, really fast. And for a reason. And the owners keep doing really cool things with it. It's a property that appeals to design-oriented buyers, the people that they focus on design. And when you run the comps, it's going to feel a little expensive next to other options. In fact, we have another option, right? That is priced $150,000 below this price and has similar functionality. Almost the same story, and doesn't touch this price point because of the value of the design. So,
I mean, the ceilings.
I just want to bring
the
it.
kind of slope on them. Everything it's really pretty.
Everything's cool. It's
Yeah.
very pretty. It was originally designed well. It's been updated well, and it's proof positive that Holiday and Uptown are moving up and appeal to a certain demographic of buyer and typically sell quickly for the right properties. And this is a pretty spectacular example. And here's an example where you always should look at the history. Right? Like, what has happened in the past? What's the longest it's ever been on the market? Well, it was on the market a little bit long in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, yeah.
No, sorry, wrong year. No, that's
Oh.
the wrong year. Sorry, this is bad data. So I'm looking at, I got a little confused. So somebody put in 2020 for expiration date. There's some bad data on the listing. But every you have to go through the legit listing history, and every time it's been on the market, it sells pretty quickly. And every seller has made money and likely will continue to make money on this property when they go to sell it. So that's the take home of 1529. Easy rider.
Very well done. Yeah, it was a cool pick. Ian and I, when we were filming the Holiday Neighborhood video, check that out on our YouTube if you haven't seen it. We filmed actually in that kind of alleyway right by that place, but I never even thought it was a resident. Yeah, a
It's
residence.
architecturally distinct. And and that video, by the way, which is on YouTube, has over 14,000 views for just a little neighborhood that we put together. And that's one of the things we do to help educate buyers and sellers and potentially attract clients. Also, cool name. So this is not really on the checklist of investment criteria, but it never
does
hurts
matter.
to have a cool name.
Yeah.
It does, right? Like, there's a street up here in the 4 Mile Canyon area called Millionaire Drive, and I'm sorry, Millionaire Drive people, but it's like being on Douchebag Lane. Like, it just comes off wrong. Like, maybe back in the day, and I shouldn't use that language, but I did too late. It comes off as just like there's a haughtiness to Millionaire Drive that
Yeah.
would make me not want to own it, because I don't want to own something that feels ostentatious, meaning
There's that
you're
implied
pushing-
kind of, ego kind of.
It's the same reason I would never drive a Bentley or a Bugatti or anything that was ultra luxury, even if it was nothing in my, in my
drop in
personal
the
bank
bucket.
account.
Yeah.
If it was a drop in the bucket of my wealth, I still wouldn't. If somebody gave it to me, I would sell it. It's just not how I'm wired to have ostentatious wealth. And so street names, to be ostentatious about affluence and wealth. I have no problem with people who are affluent and wealthy, but ostentatiousness personally just doesn't feel good to me. There's something ethical that bugs me about it. I come from a different era, maybe.
There's
Or flashing your wealth in front of people just makes other people feel bad, and I don't know. Easy Rider, by the way, I used to have a postcard from the movie, like a shot from the movie on my fridge, and I think it's in the gym now. I think I've got it up in my gym with Jack. What's his name? Jack Nicholson riding on the back with Dennis Hopper, and he's got his football helmet on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'll come up with it maybe in the next podcast or something, but there are a few street names I've seen where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't just because of the street name. And they're not ostentatious or anything, but they're just bad names, you know? And you're like, who wants to say they live there? But if the house works.
There was just one on the market on Prairie Fire, right? Like Prairie Fire is a horrible name.
Yeah.
For
do you think insurance is just higher by happenstance?
Probably. Yeah. I'm like Prairie Fire. Like we just had a prairie fire called the Marshall Fire, and it destroyed over 1,000 houses. You don't really want Prairie Fire in your name, or I mean,
it's a little more than a prairie. Yeah.
Right. Radiation Avenue, Asbestos Lane. This is probably the problem with Leadville. Lead doesn't have a good connotation, and I think the city should have renamed itself 50 years ago. But
depleted Uraniumville.
Right.
Anyway, in the news.
Okay, let's move on. We're into our last segment.
All right.
Hamish, what's in the news?
Second to last segment. In the news, Osmond, as I get this time code down. The first thing I wanted to...
Second to the last segment. Yeah. Hamish is right.
Well, I bit the bullet and got myself a little subscription to the Daily Camera. I have their... they'll mail out or email out some news articles, and I was clicking through them, and some of them I really wanted to read. And this one popped up. Superior discusses regulation of short-term rentals. I don't necessarily think we need to really read out the entire article. Have you looked it over, Oz?
I have.
Okay.
And I mean, I can cover the gist of it really quick, and then maybe you could tell me what you think.
Yeah.
The gist of it is that... Oh, go ahead.
I think it's kind of a non-event article, but it kind of alludes to things coming up. Right? Like, there's no hard news in it. Anyway, yeah, I'll let you take it away.
Well, it is news in that Superior finally has figured out that they need to have some sort of short-term rental regulation, and they have not in a long time. Unlike a lot of other communities in Boulder County that have enacted short-term rental restrictions, and across the Front Range, and probably across the country, short-term rental restrictions have just been on the up and up because they are wildly profitable for the people that were early in the game, and they also really annoy the neighbors if it's a really successful short-term rental. And some communities recognize that short-term rentals are part of the ecosystem in ways that are fundamental, like in the mountain towns, resort towns. I mean, others are saying, hey, that's taking away housing from employees in the resort towns. Yeah, workforce housing is being constricted. This could have gone to a family or to people that are long-term renters. And instead, it's being treated like a hotel room and making buco bucks for the owner and annoying everyone else. So let's tax it. And let's make some money on taxes. We want our share. And that's one approach.
Time for regulation.
Right. And the other approach is to limit the number of rentals by neighborhood, like Breckenridge does. We have a whole rental map that we helped focus on when we listed our last sale in Breck.
That's right.
So the take home is it's really important to understand two things. Rental ordinances are going to continue to become more restrictive, and two, you really need to understand the existing regulation and the likelihood of more regulation before you pull the trigger on buying something that you intend to rent short term. And I don't have a personal opinion. Like if you want to buy a short term rental property, I'm more than happy to help you. That's not my job, is to moralize on removing workforce housing. I believe in a market, and I believe that there's an opportunity that people should take advantage of. But I also caution my clients that it isn't as easy as you think. And you'd better understand the rules, and you better not be too attached, because people that rent short-term properties are pretty hard on them. And it's a lot of work to turn them over and maintain them and to market them properly. It's not a passive income source to be a short-term rental owner.
In fact, it's really hard for real estate in general to be a passive income source, at least a passive cash flow source. Yeah.
Go buy a REIT.
A what?
A real estate investment trust. It's an asset class where you can take advantage of rental income stream without actually being the manager. But all of that has gone to pot because of high rates. So acquisitions for long and short-term rentals, the numbers no longer support that type of investment anyway, and Superior is just really late to the game.
Yeah, I was
honestly,
surprised
they're
by
like
that.
10 years. They're 10 years behind the curve, maybe 15 years behind the curve of regulating, and all the stuff they're talking about is like mostly other communities have done a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be difficult for them to come up with something. They could just look next door to, I don't know, Louisville or their own county, Boulder.
Yeah. The part I don't like is this paragraph in here that says town manager Matt Magley said the town would likely hire a third party to help track and manage short-term rentals in town, and further details on any financial and budgetary impacts will be discussed at the second reading. Third party sounds like you've got the secret police that are chasing short-term rentals and busting people, and that just feels icky. I will say Boulder has become less heavy-handed and threatening, but they also have full-time employees that run around looking to bust short and long-term rentals.
They have gotten more
when
cunning,
they're not licensed.
however. Yeah.
They have. They will even message you through the app that you've listed your property on to remind you that this property, by the way, needs a license. And we're watching you, what you're doing. Don't think we're not.
And yeah, I think we should leave it at that because I think we could keep going, but yeah.
Okay.
Okie dokie. Yeah, that's Superior. Just kind of, it's relevant, so we discuss it. That is the mission.
All right, next article.
Yes, sir.
Bloomberg. The headline is Bond Traders Boldly Bet on 300 basis points of Fed cuts by March. And this standout play in options puts the target rate for policy as low as 2.25, but the Feds are only forecasting 1/4 point cut this year. So, of course, March is not this year. March is the first quarter of next year. So a little bit different time periods there. But there are some bets being made that we're going to see much more dramatic rate cuts. And this is sort of wishful thinking, in my opinion. This is telling you what you really want to hear. But there's always the possibility of this occurring. And Bloomberg does note that this wager could simply be a hedge on another investment, that they need to make this bet to cover themselves in the event this occurred. And so this type of return on these types of bets are massive and not necessarily an indicator of the large market pricing it in. But this article did do a good job of talking about some of the other expectations for rate decreases, both what the Fed is saying it's probably going to have happen versus the market, which is slightly more aggressive than what the Fed might be saying is going to happen. And then you have these outliers that are pricing in much deeper cuts. And of course, there's a whole bunch of option conversation in this article that we're not going to get into because I'm no longer an expert in this world and don't want to give anybody the wrong idea that I am.
Just
Although
a bit of liability.
I did have a Series 63 and a Series 7 securities license back in the day. But I do pay attention to what the bond market is saying and what types of bets are being made and try to put my head around what does that mean for the real estate market. And what I see is a buildup of inventory, as I talked about in the market conditions segment of this podcast. And what I see is an opportunity in the late third and early fourth quarter to potentially get some pretty good deals. And in the event that rates do start to decrease, and if they decrease substantially, as some of these bond traders are betting, that could really reignite the market in a way that might surprise some people. And so one theory is that if you're not getting your price on what you're trying to list right now, you may want to consider just pulling it off the market and bringing it back in the spring, because there could be significant upside for you if there is a lot of rate drop and the economy is doing well in the spring. I don't know how to advise clients on that sort of maneuver other than to say the possibility exists. And what matters more is to
Find the right
get the
place.
right property.
Yeah.
If you're a buyer, you can always refi into a lower rate. We've already seen serious price decreases here in the city of Boulder. So how much deeper is it going to go? Keep in mind, unlike a lot of markets, right? A lot of industries, they think about the travel industry. When the plane leaves, if the seats aren't filled, the airline is losing money. But the demand for that particular time period can be shifted a little bit forward and back. But life
Events.
Life events.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm like, what's the
I got
word?
you.
Life events are what drive real estate transactions, and they still exist and they build up over time. So the need to buy or sell a property because of family needs, estate planning, job changes, marriages, divorces, that still existed, and there's a lot of people on the sidelines. And when those people all jump back in mass, there's likely to be a really fast swing. So you may want to think about planning for that in the future.
It's a little harder to defer, major life events. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have a buyer right now. It's not our client, but what's been communicated to us is that they're first-time buyers. They're in their what appear to be mid-30s, maybe late 30s, and they're getting some monthly payment shock. Right? The monthly payment because of mortgage rates is painful. Mm-hmm. But they're also looking at how the prices have come down, and they're like, hey, wait a minute. Right? We may have 6 months to a year of higher monthly payments, but we're going to put more than 20% down, and we're going to refi into lower rates every time rates drop. Mm-hmm. And that's going to make this property cheaper and cheaper over time. So that makes sense, especially given that dollars are depreciating in value, and real estate, now that it's reaching what I think is close to the bottom, has a lot of upside.
Yeah.
And actually, what's funny is real estate's actually appreciated nationally. It hasn't really dropped. It's gone the other way. It's just that we're seeing a lot of price reductions. So let's balance that information.
Okay. I thought you were about to jump into a data dive. But that's, you see it, I see it at least, is where it's like, prices have been really high up, but they're not necessarily being slashed. They're just becoming more realistic at this point,
Look at the price trends over a 5 and 7 year period. Compare that to renting. And compare the difference between the feeling you get by being an owner and paying off your own mortgage versus 5 to 7 years of paying off my mortgage. And how does that make you feel?
Great. Yeah. Amortization is a different story, but I think I've been here for a year, and I have a whole $4,000 of equity more than I did when I started. So, it's getting pretty serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, $4,000 is better than zero.
100%. It's just funny.
And next year it'll probably be $5,000.
It's true. It goes up. Yeah. No, I still 100% agree. Yeah.
Let's hit our last story, Hamish, before we go into our last segment.
Yes. So I've always heard about
Sundance.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the article is from a news source I don't look at very often, but it is the Hollywood Reporter. And it looks like Boulder is gunning to be the new location of the Sundance Film Festival, which is Robert Redford's film festival, and brings in 20,000 people a year to Utah and generates more than $100 million for the state. Wow. And Boulder is a leading candidate to attract the film festival. It appears that the film festival is seriously considering leaving Utah, possibly because of its anti-LGBTQ stance and the hostility that Utah seems to have for that, and Colorado clearly doesn't, thankfully. We are very LGBTQ positive at House Einstein, by the way. Mm-hmm. And if that's the reason that Sundance is leaving Utah, I say all for it. But it's interesting to see Boulder in the running for it, given that Boulder tries really hard, it seems, to not be in the running for anything. I've heard city council. Seriously, I've been at meetings at city council where council people have said, "What can we do to make Boulder less attractive to employers?"
Valid.
So we stop attracting all these. This is 100% true, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, "What did you just say?" Yeah, they're trying to make Boulder less attractive. So this article kind of surprises me, but I hope it's true, and I would love to see Sundance here. I'm a film aficionado. I'm on the board of the Dairy, and I don't think it would be competitive with BIFF, the Boulder International Film Festival. I think it would be just fine to have 2 film festivals in Boulder, spread them out by a few months, and let's make it happen. This is a spectacular idea, and let me be the first to, and not the last, to hope and welcome Sundance if it comes here.
No kidding. There's this YouTuber you and I both watch. This guy edits. I think he had a movie that got on Sundance. So, just kind of neat.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I really haven't
I just
seen a lot of Sundance movies.
I just remember growing up with the news stories about Sundance and the celebrities attending Sundance, And the name just sounded so magical, Sundance.
Yeah, it's got that air. I was shocked to find out it's in Utah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Utah, which
all
we
places.
won't go too far down that rabbit hole.
Pretty.
But Chris, if you're listening to this, I warned you about Utah when you moved back there, and then you moved back here again. So I predicted it that you would be back in a decade, and here you are. I won't say his name because he's pretty well known in Boulder, but that's probably enough to identify.
Is that Chris?
Not saying anything else, Hamish.
Gotcha.
I don't know who Chris is, or not saying anything.
Anyway.
All right. So that's Boulder's hat is in the ring for Sundance. We hope we get it. And of course, Sundance has a Native American ritual meaning, but that's another topic for another day. Okay. We are finally into the segment we held you waiting for this entire time.
And unfortunately, we can't tell you about this segment because this segment is confidential.
Yes, we won't be able to tell you about this confidential topic today. No, Hamish is kidding.
Or am I misinformed?
You might be misinformed, which it turns out so is most of the real estate community, and so is the vast majority of buyers and sellers, in my experience. People just don't know. And let me back up a moment and remind the listeners that what I'm about to share pertains to Colorado and not to other states where confidentiality may in fact be a thing. And it is presumed to be a thing in Colorado, but it turns out in the practice of residential real estate, confidentiality is rarely brought into play. It might in from a legal perspective. So let's back up. Here's what preceded or prompted this conversation. This week I had a potential listing meeting. I think I may still get this listing. We'll see. And she asked me for a sample of our contract. And it's a super busy day. So I just sent her an old listing agreement. And I said, here's an old listing agreement. And here, and more importantly than the listing agreement, is our marketing and communications plan, which is not a standard thing at all. And here's what we do. And she texted me back and said, can you share this? Isn't it confidential? And I said, no, period. It's not. And I think that she's sort of puzzled by this. But that's because of this perception that real estate contracts are confidential. And why would my seller care if I share an old listing agreement, other than it discloses what I get paid, which I don't have a problem with disclosing. And I'm a party to the contract, so which is a whole nother level. But traditionally, so where does this come into play? Traditionally, confidentiality comes into play when a buyer does not want their name known. Let's say they're a famous person, a celebrity, or
public figure,
a very affluent person, a public figure. That's when confidentiality really matters, and there's potential ways to protect that, although they're becoming more and more limited, as some people recently learned in Boulder, where the title company gave away who the buyer was, and it ended up in the news. This is a few years ago. And the buyer did not want their purchase in the news. And guess what? It's top headline of the home they bought. And it was the title company somehow just leaked it. So there's all sorts of ways it can leak, even if you do something like put it in an LLC. But let's back up even further and say, all right, where in the contracts, what is actually confidential in Colorado residential real estate contracts that are the standard form of contract, not some custom thing an attorney wrote, but the vast majority of transactions are done on DORA contracts, and they're negotiated with buy-side and sell-side agents. And these contracts, the contract to buy and sell, the exclusive right to list, the buyer agency agreement, all of those have some mention of confidentiality, but where does it apply? It's mentioned in the following areas. It's mentioned if there's a dispute in the contract and they're fighting over the earnest money or who's in bad faith. It's mentioned that mediation is the first step, which could be handled confidentially, not disclosed to the public. It's mentioned in the price and terms section, and this is an advisory to the seller on on being cautious in the disclosure of bank account numbers and social security numbers. That's section 11.6. And it's mentioned in giving permission to a from a buyer or seller to the supervisory or employing broker in the event the associate broker needs support. They are pre-authorizing the associate to disclose it to somebody like me, the employing broker or supervising broker, so that they can continue to handle or advise on the deal. So that's already in there too. And the buyer agency has a little checkbox on the disclosure of the buyer's identity. That's section 13. But if you're going to submit an offer, you either need to submit it in. Your name's going to be on the offer, or you potentially could have the offer that's submitted in an LLC or trust. And that's another way that people will try to mask who is the actual buyer of the property. But they need to have set up that trust before they begin the process. And they also need to make sure the signatories of that trust are somebody like an attorney at the law firm who set up the trust. Because otherwise, right, they're signing their
still going to get
it's Robert Redford.
anyhow. Yeah.
Right. It's the Sundance LLC, and the signatures are Robert Redford. You know who it is, right? If you're the seller, right? You get this buy side contract, and you're like, well, Robert Redford's a billionaire. I'm not giving him a discount. Yeah. And so that's why people try to mask who the actual buyer is. But the contract to buy and sell and all of the regular contracts that we work, well, these three main contracts that we work with, the listing agreement, the buyer agency, the contract to buy and sell, says nothing about
they're
not sharing.
It's not explicitly confidential, right? I think that's the term.
It's not. Yeah. There's nothing saying you can't there's nothing saying you can't take this contract and put it on a billboard. But would you do that? The answer is, of course, no. Why would you embarrass your buyer or seller or any buyer or seller to do that? So where does this actually come into play? I mean, in practice, agents don't usually share contracts with third parties, even though there's nothing that prohibits them from doing that, unless you've chosen this checkbox about hiding the buyer's identity in your buyer agency agreement. And where it really matters is in multiple offer or bidding war scenarios. That's where I see it coming out to play. And so this is what it looks like. I represent a buyer, and they know they're in a bidding war, so we put in an escalation clause in the additional provisions section of the contract that says we will beat out any other offer by $3,500. Seller to substantiate the other offer by sending it to us within 24 hours, and it has to be the complete offer, no redactions. And a few times I've gotten a phone call back from the listing side that says, we can't do that, the other offers are confidential. And I have to educate them in a way that doesn't annoy them.
You can't be condescending.
I can't be Mr. Know-it-all. Well, let me tell you how it really is. That doesn't work. I need to gently say, actually, contracts are not confidential. If you feel there's something in particular you would like to redact, like the buyer's name or their brokerage, that's fine. Redact that, but it still should be the complete contract other than very minimal redactions to it so that we know it's legitimate and we know we can verify the other terms besides price, because offers are not the same. A cash offer at $1 million might be worth a lot less or a lot more than a non-cash offer plus or minus 50 or 100,000. There's a lot of factors in those offers, a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of contingencies, and you have to compare them and make sure they're apples to apples. And so that's why we ask for the other offer, is to make sure that what's triggering the escalation is legitimate and is actually a bona fide offer that is of similar terms other than, say, price. But that's one place that you see confidentiality. And the other thing, well, you see a resistance to disclosing and agents that claim confidentiality. And then the other thing that you sometimes see is buyers that really want to protect their identity when they are somebody that may be a public figure or a celebrity or affluent. They just don't want to... Yeah, they don't want to compromise themselves in some way. Look at Coach Prime. Almost certainly Coach Prime did not buy his property in the name Deion Sanders.
Probably.
Because you'd have a bunch of weirdos camped outside his house.
Angry people, depending on the day.
Right. I mean, who knows? People that are in love with him, there's a lot of mentally disturbed people out there. Can you imagine Taylor Swift buying a property in her own name?
Never, yeah.
Right? Wouldn't happen. And even when she buys it in an LLC or a trust that has no mention of her name or anything that tied to her, she's still going to have full-time security everywhere because of how her celebrity endangers her safety and her family's safety. So privacy is really important, but you have to protect it well before you're looking at houses. And the right way to do it is with an attorney who prepares an LLC or trust for you that anonymizes your real identity. Even though there's now a beneficial ownership rule of LLCs, you have to disclose to the Treasury who actually benefits from the LLC. But as far as I can tell, that beneficial ownership is not disclosed to the public. It's held confidential by the Treasury. So the government wants to know who you are, but the public doesn't have a right to know who the LLC or trust is, at least in Colorado. And some states, by the way, Hamish, are non-disclosure states entirely. So they hide in detail who the actual owner is, but Colorado is not. And therefore, you have to take additional measures to protect your privacy if that's what you really want.
That's really good to know.
So,
yeah.
Take home, too long didn't read, the contract itself, buy or sell, the buy and sell contract, the buyer agency agreement, and the listing agreement, and I'm pretty sure every other agreement in DORA, but I haven't looked at every single one to verify this, don't have anything that automatically protects the privacy of the buyer or seller or other parties to the contract. And there's nothing preventing people from sharing your offer if they wanted to with a billboard, but that would be a bad business practice.
Gosh, could you imagine? Yeah, granted, there is a level of professionalism, and thankfully people do, to some extent, respect privacy. Could you imagine if it's just Facebook posts? You go on Instagram and this agent just shared their offer. Thoughts? Question mark?
I mean, I have had agents share. So I'm on the listing side in this example, and and we're getting offers, and I've had rookies send me not just the contract to buy and sell, but also their buyer agency agreement, and I'm like. Okay, I didn't need to see that. You just had to check the box that says you're the buyer's
Good to
agent.
see what you're up to, though. Thanks. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for sharing your buyer agency. So where does it matter if you're a realtor? You should take into account discretion. And
That's the word.
If I ever thought what I was doing was somehow going to upset my client, I wouldn't share it. I would figure out a way to not share it. But in most cases, whenever I've shared a contract, I'm very confident there's no issue here and there's nothing that would upset my buyer or seller to have sent it to another potential client. All it does is disclose things that are public record anyway, other than the commissions, and more importantly, our entire marketing and communications plan, which is such a competitive advantage for what we do.
Yeah, that one we got to keep close to our chest. With good reason.
Hamish, are you excited?
What would I be excited
Look at the time clock.
We're nailing it today. On the show notes, I wrote down flawless segue for our segue and to tell me something I don't know. But
flawless segue. Get a gold star.
Yeah, we have 10 exclamation marks on that one. But, shoot. We've made it. We're within an hour and a half, 90 minutes.
We are. And I'm going to let you do the roll call for the final closing here. But the last thing I want to mention is that we may not do a podcast next week. It is Independence Day on Thursday. But the 3rd is, we usually record these on a Wednesday. It looks like we should be able to get it done. I've got some travel happening on the 3rd, so we need to communicate. There may or may not be a podcast next week. So stay tuned on that one, folks.
Alrighty. Well, folks, you made it this far. By now, the sides of your mouth are probably hurting from the laughter because this is an entertainment podcast. And if you're a client, I'm sure I hope you learned a lot of things. But if you have any specific questions, please be sure to reach out to us directly. I hope you have our number, but if not, you can find that on our website, houseeinstein.com. You can also sign up to the newsletter there. Osmond talked a decent amount about it. Should be some good properties to talk about coming up here soon, especially with the ones that are and are not selling. Be sure to sign up for that. We have a plethora of new videos going out on our YouTube as well. Osmond's been posting some really cool historic Boulder long format videos, which have been great to kind of just listen to the audio in the background. And I started up a new playlist for that, Osmond, just called Historic Boulder. Kind of we can group all those in the same one.
That's great. That's great.
So yeah.
There's a video on the little rectangle, which is a historic Black neighborhood in Boulder. There's a video about mid-century modern in Table Mesa. And I'm about to release a video on NCAR. And these are all videos, by the way, that is from people at Historic Boulder. We put almost no branding on them other than it's on our YouTube channel. We're not trying to get clients from Historic Boulder. I just think it's really important to share this vital information about our community.
Immortalize
so
it.
It's long form, it's raw. I do mic if the presenter allows me to mic, I will clip a mic so you have good audio. But yeah, check them out. There's a lot of detailed history that you can learn about Boulder in the Historic Boulder series on our YouTube.
Yeah, I'll be throwing them on, making dinner or something coming up. But yeah, that's us. We have Instagram, Facebook, all sorts of social medias. Be sure to check us out and see what we're up to on our week-to-week. I think that's...
And thank you so much for joining us today at the House Einstein podcast. We are deeply appreciative of our listeners, of the comments we get. We do encourage you to subscribe and click the notification bells. And please do tell your friends, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.